I'm spinning my tea. I have a comment.
Let's hear it.
Mean Girls of the 1840s.
Yeah. Here we go.
Elizabeth Elliot.
Yes.
I think that's all we need to start the show.
Let's start. Let's begin.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond the Oblong Box. I, of course, am Virginia Poe.
And I'm Levi Leland.
And this is episode number 7.
7
wow.
now, yeah.
Are we on 7? That's cool.
Moving right along with these episodes.
Right. So episode number 7, this is The Crimes of Griswold.
We've come to this point in the podcast.
I just figured we should get it out of the way.
Yeah. No, we do. We have to
I'm just saying.
Put the, air out the dirty laundry and talk about the elephant in the room and however many analogies you want to come up with. They're all appropriate.
and it's rather funny thinking about Griswold because he's kind of like, in my opinion, and some people who know who I'm talking about, like, he reminds me in certain ways of Jonathan Ruskin.
Okay.
Art critic.
Yeah.
Pre-Raphaelite art critic. Man could paint himself, trust me. And I give mad props to him. But he was very harsh and very critical of everyone and everything, including his proteges or his, his peers. And it was just, so I've kind of always, and they're not that far apart in history, really, just across the pond. But I kind of feel like, Griswold is Poe's Ruskin.
Gotcha. That's a good way to put it. I mean, that's a good...
Because especially how Ruskin was to... See, I told you I was going to pull some pre-Raphaelite stuff into this whole conversation.
You did. Forewarned me.
I forewarned you. And so I kind of feel like that Griswold and Ruskin are, compatible with one another, with Rossetti and Poe on the same platform as well, who was also a poet. But we'll talk about that later. But tonight we're talking about... I'd rather talk about Poe and Rossetti, honestly, but that'll be another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Griswold.
We have to talk about Griswold because we owe him so much and we owe him nothing at the same time.
Exactly.
And you know what you know what I mean.
Yes. I do.
Poe and Griswold were colleagues.
Contemporaries.
They were contemporaries, frenemies, I like to call them, because...
And Eddie was 6 years older?
I want to say,
1815 was Griswold's birth year? Yes.
Yeah, yes. I'm pretty sure around 1815, and he died...
February 13th?
Yeah, I know it was a February, like around Valentine's Day, which was, another reason to hate the holiday.
I know, right?
It's because it was Griswold's birthday.
We're still dumping on it.
Screw him. I know. We got to move. I got to get over it.
We've got to get past this. We've got to move on.
I got to get over it. I know. I can't.
We just can't.
He died. Let's see. 1857. So that was, he died about 8 years after Poe. So really they were kind of parallel. Probably. August? I think it was August.
And of tuberculosis.
He died of tuberculosis. Yes. So.
And who else used this excuse as being pushed to their grave? Because Griswold said who was basically pushing him to his grave. Elizabeth Elliot.
Yes. Yes. So
much like with Virginia.
Right. There was the scandal behind Griswold, just the vicious, let's preface.
She's the original Mean Girl.
Yeah, no, for real.
Not the original, but
Elliot was kind of like that tick. You know what I mean? She was the tick in the whole circle and just latched on and just sucking the blood.
Sucked everybody dry.
Yeah. So, but with Poe and Griswold, I want to start at kind of their beginning, kind of what kind of pushed the snowball down the hill, so to speak. The Boston Miscellany magazine, 1842, and wait.
Yes.
I own a first edition. Up. Yes, I do. So
you're my hero, Levi.
Now, Boston Miscellany, 1842. You will find. Oh, and this book is falling apart. I need to get it rebound.
I'm sure
but this is a first edition. Now, I don't know if you can read that title.
Not without my glasses, silly.
Sorry, I forgot.
Not without my glasses.
Griswold's American Poetry by Edgar A. Poe.
So, this
magazine, this was Poe's review of Rufus Griswold's anthology, The Poets and Poetry of America. Now, this is
what started the tit for tat.
So Poe is known as the Tomahawk Man, as we've discussed. Harsh critic, scathing critic. But Griswold was highly acclaimed in the literary world as well for being, he was a poet, but like he was more known for his anthologies, and any poet who was a poet in that day wanted to be published in one of Griswold's anthologies. Like that's how you got that confirmation that you had made it and you were a big name. So Griswold paid Poe $10 to write a favorable review of his anthology, right? So $10 back then is in today's money about $200.
Yeah, something like that. So it's not so change.
it's a good chunk of change, especially for Poe, who was starving and whose wife was starving.
For serious.
For real. So that was a nice price. So Griswold paid him the $10 to write this review. And so Poe, and of course, I don't want to say it was a bribe, but they knew it was a bribe. It was kind of this unspoken. It was this unspoken thing, like, "Hey, here's $10.
Make me look good."
Right. Yeah. You're the reviewer. Everyone respects your reviews. If you give my anthology a great review, then everyone will know it's good because you are ruthless, right? So Poe being Poe, took the money
and gave his honest opinion
and gave his honest review, which was not a good review. It wasn't terrible.
Heavens.
It was just okay. He said that Griswold gave too many pages to poets who didn't deserve it and not enough pages to poets who did deserve it. So this kind of started the whole, the whole feud. This started what I assume was the rage inside Griswold that carried over the next 7 years until Poe died.
Sure.
Because, we know when Poe died, Griswold published that awful, just repugnant obituary. You don't really speak that ill of the dead, but he did in like the first and most widely read obituary of Poe. It was awful, and he signed it under a pseudonym, Ludwig.
And all I'm going to say is, who do we still talk about? Who do people remember, and who do people like look to for inspiration?
Right.
Not Griswold.
Exactly. Griswold is only known as the infamous defamer of Edgar Allan. Excuse me, Poe. See, I'm getting all choked up. No. I need a sip of coffee.
To get through, folks.
So Griswold, trashed Poe, signed this obituary under the pseudonym Ludwig, and I looked it up. Ludwig translates.
Well, I don't know. Because there was this feud, basically,
they had
back
a feud
very
between
publicly,
right?
In papers, even.
Exactly.
Everybody could literally read the dirty laundry. Yes,
exactly. No, you're exactly right. And I don't know if that was Griswold's way to say, like, hey, guess who won? Guess who won? Guess who's dead? And now guess who's writing about the dead guy? But that's what Griswold thought.
Guess who really won?
Exactly. And that was the ultimate like irony, was that Griswold's obituary only made Poe more famous. People were more intrigued by him, even though Griswold spread all these lies. Poe was a weirdo, a drug addict, a madman, an alcoholic, which obviously the alcoholism thing, it has
totally false.
Everyone can debate back and forth over the alcoholism thing, but whatever Griswold said and everything he said was pretty much false. Now, he included enough like nice things in the obituary to where it was believable.
Compliments.
Yeah, exactly. But also enough to where, right, enough to where people would kind of believe that it came from it wasn't just someone trash talking someone else. It was like, oh, well, this must be an honest obituary, because, there's some negative things, but they're saying good things. So this just must be an honest overview of this person, which it wasn't.
Right.
And it's funny that Griswold, would go and call Poe, all these things, kind of accusing him of being, this kind of sleazy, weird, strange, melancholic guy, when Griswold really was like this tragic figure. This weird, Griswold was this weird, tragic. Now, so, okay.
Are we going to talk about his first wife?
Yeah, how that she was incapable of.
No. That was wife number 2.
That was his second wife.
That was wife number 2. That was Charlotte.
Charlotte Myers, I think.
Myers.
Yeah. So, okay. See, I'm getting ahead of myself.
His first wife, Caroline.
Yes.
It's amazing how much I actually remember about this man, even though I can't stand his guts.
I know, me too. It's all coming back to me as we speak. But go ahead.
She died. Yeah, so they met in 1835, I believe, and they were married in 37, I believe.
Because she died in 42, right around the same time Poe's, critique was published.
Correct.
So she died the same year.
Yes. So with Caroline, who I think is also the name of their first daughter?
First daughter, yeah.
Yeah, their first daughter was also named Caroline. But they had 2 beautiful daughters. He had gone to Philadelphia, and his wife had their 3rd child while he was in transit. And they unfortunately died during childbirth, and it was a son. And he actually traveled with her body for 30 hours and stayed with her for 30 hours would not leave her side until relatives and friends made him go. And he kissed her lips in front of his children, which, okay, I'm going to just say it. It's oddly romantic. It's very tragic. And it's very befitting of the time, so to speak, you know?
Yeah.
And then at her funeral, he again would not leave her side.
Yeah.
Even after all the mourners had left and one of his relatives made him go.
Yep.
40 days after she had been interred into the cemetery.
She was in a crypt.
In a crypt. He was convinced
mausoleum.
that they would be reunited. He did not believe that she was actually gone. And he went there and he opened up the crypt.
Yeah.
And there, you know, and there she was. And he realized she wasn't coming back. And apparently, again, he kissed her forehead, he kissed her lips, and he sat
cut
next
locks
to her.
Of her hair.
And cut a lock of her hair,
Yeah.
And sat next to her side, again, weeping for 30 hours until a friend happened to find him there.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's intense. Like,
it
that,
really is.
Again, is a love, you know, that is greater. You know, I mean, that's, you know, most people don't. Man, relationship goals.
Right.
You know?
And not only that, like 1842, when you passed away, you weren't embalmed. You weren't.
No.
So
so she was,
at 40 days, 40 days dead, she was at a considerable stage of decomposition. And here he was cuddling, kissing, cutting her hair, laying with her. I mean, there had to have been a smell. There had to have been some decomposition happening there.
Exactly.
And he was, you know, and he had, so I can't help but think a lot of his.
And he sound like this whole scene sounds like something out of one of Eddie's stories. So it's like, it's so like art imitating life, imitating art, you know?
I lost you there for 1 second.
Oh no, there you come back. Yay!
But I am back.
Is something going on with the interwebs?
I think it just was my internet. It went out for like a second.
Oh no!
So
my point, in case you missed it, was
I did miss it.
Oh no! Okay, so
restarting.
So what I said is silly internet. What I was saying is that, you know, this whole scene that's playing out, it's very much like something out of one of Eddie's stories. It's art imitating life, imitating art, you know, and so it's very strange how like the two of them could have been BFFs, you know,
right?
Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
But we're not going to let him be on the same pedestal.
No. It should be mentioned too that when Griswold first moved out of his house in Vermont, I think he lived on a farm with his family, and he moved in. He moved in with a gentleman that was questionably his lover.
Yes.
So he was probably or purportedly homosexual. You know, which at that time, because he did have a wife, but at that time, obviously wasn't something that people came out with. So that was another thing that Griswold probably had, you know, closeted and caused a lot of that, you know, distraught behavior, and you know, in his lifetime. Which brings me to his second wife.
Right.
Which this is like
poor Charlotte. Poor Charlotte.
What? I'm sorry, but this is insane.
Lady.
So
go ahead. You talk about Charlotte.
I don't know. We will be censored right out of Spotify if I talk about.
No. So basically, maybe I can say it with more. I don't know.
You probably have
maybe
better
I can
words.
say it a little bit more eloquently. Sadly, well, first of all, he was kind of not bullied into marrying her, but he was kind of bullied into marrying Charlotte. And he didn't really want to, but I think it was her aunt who like really pushed
pushing
the issue.
the union.
Yeah. And so he went ahead and married her anyway. And apparently, she was incapable of having relations. And so because of that, he really didn't talk kindly of her.
No.
And was very mean about it. But they stayed together. They ended up moving to North Carolina, South Carolina?
One of the Carolinas, but
to a Carolina. They moved
too many for one country.
Which is where they moved back to Charlotte's hometown. And they lived there for quite some time before she actually filed for, complete, total separation. This is done, basically a divorce before it was a divorce. And, part of it's crazy. She had to pay him, if I remember correctly, almost $1,000 for the separation. And I think Caroline stayed living with her. I believe.
Yeah.
Or with a member of the family.
Yes.
With the Myers family.
His biological daughter, which would have been her stepdaughter, stayed with her.
With her, yeah.
Griswold was just this tragic character that had so many things go completely upside down in his life. And I think his critique of Poe and his complete trashing and dragging of Poe through the mud was all a projection of his own life, of his own, his
unresolved
misfortunes,
feelings.
his own feelings, his own jealousy. Not to mention, Poe was kind of his successor in a way. Poe, got the girls that, like Frances Osgood.
Oh, yeah. Who he was also
Griswold
friends with. I mean, shocker,
Right. And Poe, it's
the world was this small.
Right. And, when Griswold died, he had portraits of Poe and Osgood hanging above his bed. It's like, what is that,
Yeah. So it's like, what?
You're scratching your head like, why? So what was this feud actually about, and why why did it result the way it did, and what was Griswold's intent? Like, and here's the real
like that. Just still to this day, that I remember the first time I read about that, and I'm like, say what? Because it didn't make any sense. It made no sense.
It exactly, and that's why I like to classify. They were like frenemies, like they were friends, but they just had it out for each other, and like they had that respect for each other, but they had that competition for each other. And one of the big things that I hear people all the time, they're like, now why would Maria Clem go and give Griswold the rights to Poe's works and to be his executor? Why would she do that? Well, it's actually the most obvious thing in the world. Poe wrote to Maria Clem in a letter months before his death, kind of in this like foreshadowing of what was to come for him. He told Maria Clem, in the event of my death, I would like Rufus Griswold to be my literary executor. He requested Griswold to be his executor to Maria Clem.
About that.
And in the same letter said that he wanted Nathaniel Parker Willis to be his biographer. Now, Nathaniel Parker Willis was the editor of the Evening Mirror, which published The Raven in 1845. Willis didn't end up being his biographer at all. He did write an article. He did publish an article about Poe, but that was about it. So Griswold kind of took all those liberties. He was the executor, the biographer. He wrote the memoir, the obituary, of course. So it's really not like people are like, oh, why did she do that? If only she didn't do that, that wouldn't have happened. It's like, no, that's what Poe wanted.
Yeah, that was
Poe
basically in his
requested.
will.
It was in his will. And so Maria Clem, not thinking anything of it, Poe trusted him.
Yeah.
This is what Poe wanted here. And that's why it's such a weird dynamic. It's such a weird relationship between these two guys, because it's like, what the hell, like.
Yeah. And then on top of that, Eddie and Virginia had this horrible scandal that we spoke about before several episodes ago, more than once. With Elizabeth Elliot. And she basically, she practically ruined Eddie with his reputation as a writer. Got a lot of his friends, especially his female literary friends, to basically turn on him. And, that left Eddie very poor in a sense. Not in a sense, but, in an actual sense, because Virginia was not doing well. They needed the money to try to get her better care.
Yep. And these friends were supporting them
because exactly.
Because with their charity.
Yeah. So of course, Virginia even stated that, she was pushing her to her death. Right. And it's funny how, Griswold has said the same thing about Elizabeth Elliot, because Elizabeth Elliot,
the tick,
can't
the virus,
keep her nose out of anything. Basically, was the one that went to Charlotte and told her, do not grant the divorce from Griswold, because she didn't want his third wife to marry him.
Right. It's so funny how it all intertwines, And
I think she even tried to get him to get Frances to turn against him as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, and she had passed away just a few years after Poe.
Correct.
And I think Elliot was trying to also convince Osgood too of the same thing, which was another reason why Griswold kind of had that that resentment and all that tension, but in the whole dynamic of that circle. It was such a mess. It was really such a mess. And now Griswold, of course, he's buried in an unmarked grave.
Yep.
Today, his legacy is nothing. He's just a pile of dirt.
I shouldn't be laughing at a man's passing.
I mean, Griswold. Now, I do like to mention. Okay, yeah,
but I do.
We can. I mean, now I have an ancestor.
Yes, Charles I was gonna say
Godfrey,
this.
Yes,
Leland. Yes, Charles Godfrey Leland.
He's a distant cousin. Now he wrote the Gospel of the Witches. So the whole the Wiccan, the pagan, it was like their original Bible, so to speak. So he spent some time with the Gypsies and he wrote about them. He did a lot of work in that field. So a really cool, very interesting guy. But he was a colleague of Rufus Griswold and that whole circle. And when Griswold died, of course, in 1857, Leland went to his desk and went through his papers, and Griswold had all sorts of things written up about Poe and other authors of that time, just trash talking them, totally just more garbage, just more crap written about these people. And Leland threw them in the fire. Griswold had prepared these things to be published after his death.
American hero.
And he's an American hero, and his blood runs through my veins. No, but it's cool. I remember when I read that, I was like, Leland, that's interesting. So let's trace that ancestry, and sure enough,
you guys are related. That's awesome. Yeah, and I remember us talking about that before.
Yep. So Leland was a hero, and again, a friend. He was a friend of Griswold's. He was a pallbearer at Griswold's funeral.
Yep.
But knew that Griswold was kind of a piece of crap, and that
not so nice.
He had a poison pen, you know,
Yeah.
he just had a poison pen and there was no reason for it, you know, and it came from it came from the wrong place, you know. Griswold was writing and publishing these nasty things with not good intent, not
right.
And Griswold and Leland knew this, and I think most of the, you know, figures in that time knew this, and that's why Griswold, you know, his fate ended the way it did. So
although I wish it did end exactly the same way it does in that movie. I'm not going to claim that it was great. I enjoyed it because I love John Cusack. But I would have loved if he really met his end with a pendulum.
Yeah.
That
would have been, to really mirror Poe's works, you know.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was like one of my favorite parts of the movie.
That was a good part. I liked, you know, that like, movie.
Yes, he's gonna get his just desserts. This is fantastic.
Yeah. It was great if,
very
you know,
about that.
if you weren't looking at it from a biographical perspective, it was a great movie. But
it was a great movie. Yes, if you weren't looking for something that's biographical.
Right. It was just a fun
and I like
twist on
John
Poe.
Cusack dressed like that.
Yeah, he's a good actor. He was.
He's one of my favorites.
Oh, I see. Okay. More than Nicolas Cage?
Oh my God. Let's not talk about Nicolas Cage.
I know. We're at 35 minutes here, so we should not delve into Nicolas Cage right now.
We might have to cut some stuff out for our podcast today. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen.
In a nutshell. Rufus Griswold.
And we shall never speak of him again.
No,
God willing. God willing.
That's it.
Although I'm sure his name might accidentally cross our lips at some point.
It might pop up here and there. He'll, you know, one thing is
it gives me the heebies.
Yeah, he'll always be synonymous with Poe.
Not what I want.
No, unfortunately, that's just how it is. But like I said,
I guess we're gonna have to wrap it up.
Yeah,
then.
we are gonna have to wrap it up.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, Griswold.
Oh, Griswold. Grizzly, grimble dude.
Grizzly Griswold.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining us, hearing us rambling on about Griswold. We'll be at the same time, same place next week. Hopefully.
God willing.
God willing. We'll see how quickly I have to move out of my house. No, I'll be here next week. Let's see. So coming up on Tuesday, March 15th, 7 o'clock until 8:30 p.m. is the next installment of the discussion series for the bicentennial of Virginia Poe. So please go to Virginia Poe bicentennial.eventbrite.com.
There you go.
To register. I got all of that out together. And it's on March 15th. It is called The Muse. This is all about her early life, works, and influences on Edgar and his writings. Yes. We'll be there.
Yeah.
Woo! Very excited about that. And so we'll see you next week.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you, Levi.
To Rufus Grizzly. To Rufus Grizzly.
All right, everybody. See you soon. Bye.